Hey, everybody, welcome to another podcast of What's Doing. You can't be happy as a newspaper columnist. He reflects. All of my best work comes from some anger. If you go up to Jimmy Breslin, he's as pissed off today as he was 30 years ago. That's the fire you want to have in your writing. This is Carl Hiaasen reflecting about Jimmy Breslin and writing a newspaper column. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you for having me on.
Hey, how did you guys meet, you and my father?
We met through Pete Hamill, and I think they were out one night anyway. I was in New York, and your dad was there, and then we also had a mutual agent at the time, Esther Newberg, and so I think it was with Pete, and I'm not sure what it might have been at a bar.
But you brought up a good word. You used the word anger.
Yeah.
My father said rage is the only thing he could ever have as a newspaper writer that kept him or anybody else he's ever studied writing columns for newspapers. You yourself use rage in all your writing as a columnist. You did it for over 30 years.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like a recognizable emotion, but it's sort of the engine that gets you. It's a sense of outrage that I know. You're just the world. Things aren't right, and you should be writing about those things and try to shine some light on them. I know that was your dad's philosophy. You just got to go in with guns blazing.
You said when you wrote that it made you happiest when people were irate with you.
Well, I think what I said was I knew I was doing my job. If that's, if you take an opinion, and this is going back, and your dad, Jimmy knew it better than anybody. If you write a strong column, somebody's going to get pissed off at you, and if everybody loves it, then you start questioning yourself. Was it tough enough? Well, did I not make myself clear on this? But yeah, I think for all the columnists I admired, that was the thing. Even if they're writing satire and humor, sometimes the crux of it was a sense of outrage.
Now, you stayed local, just like my father used to say, you got to write what you know. Write what you know.
Yeah.
And he used to tell me there's a guy in Florida, this guy Hiaasen, he's big, he's big. And I used to think to myself, wow, he said, yeah, he's at the Miami Herald. And I used to say, well, he has to be good because my father wasn't that complimentary.
No,
Oh, he wasn't. And he thought highly of you.
he wasn't, but it was so much fun. At one time, he came down. Were you with him when he came down there? He was looking for this gangster, and he was. I hope I didn't know him. I didn't know how to introduce him or anything. Not and Jimmy came down there on the prowl and just showed up on Fort Lauderdale Beach. This was before cell phones, but he had given me a rough idea where he was. And I'm walking along, and there's a car going by, and he's literally hanging out the window yelling, "Hiaasen, Hiaasen." So he was a piece of work, man. Everybody loved him. Well, not everybody he wrote about loved him, but everybody in the business.
Well, that's just, you brought up a good point. He didn't want to be liked. Did you want to be liked when you wrote your newspaper column?
No, I wanted people to read it and think about it. You're right. I didn't think about, but I didn't want. I know I wasn't in it for the warm and fuzzies. Space is too valuable. I did. I told my editor if I ever write a column about my dog, just come up behind me in the newsroom and grab me by the neck and throw me out of the building. If I get to that level where I start writing about my pets, then yeah.
Well, exactly, because my father said, I'm a reporter. You shouldn't be comfortable unless everybody's against you. Then you know you're right.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to explain where that feeling comes from, but I think it's just what a true honesty about what your job is, and you don't be under delusions that you always feel like, at least I did with the comedy, you're writing for people who don't necessarily have a voice, or who are thinking the same things and maybe are afraid to say it, or who don't have any, they don't have an outlet for the same feelings you do. And so you're not writing for the powerful and the wealthy and the comfortable.
Do you think today journalism schools or even social media has made everybody want to be maybe a little too nice or a little too complacent?
I do. I do. I think because, when I mean, I retired in 2021. But, I mean, obviously there was social media, but I think now everybody's afraid that, if you write about Trump, the whole MAGA machine will call you out online and you know, torment you online. But my answer to that was, I don't read any of that stuff. I don't read the stuff posted online. But why would I? I don't think your dad did. So I remember getting asked in town, "Did you see that letter to the editor today about you?" And I said, "No." And why would I read it? I'm working. you know.
Excellent point. My father used to have, when he'd go to his office, it was cluttered. There was, no exaggeration, hundreds, maybe boxes of letters to him, hate mail. Jimmy Breslin, I'll kill you. Jimmy Breslin, you're a piece of this, lad. And he didn't look at, I don't think he ever read one letter in his whole career.
No, because
He was too busy working, just like you, doing the legwork.
they're working and it's distracting. And so they'd written a letter or their email or post and they'd gotten it off their chest. Good, but move on. We're moving on. I mean, that's just the way you have to think about it.
Hey, Carl, I say this a lot because Trump has become so monumental in every way. But the one area where I don't like him is where he claims everybody's hoax media. You're no hoax. My father was no hoax.
No, and he says that it's just a line that he's remembered from somebody to say you always blame the media, fake media, legacy media. Where I'm from in Florida, Ron DeSantis does the exact same thing. It's like they all got the same memo that when you get caught doing something, just say it's fake news or it's hoax, and just walk away from the question. That's kind of exactly the playbook that a lot of people are using now because it has worked for Trump. I mean, it worked. I don't know. It doesn't work for long because, judging from the polls, people are sort of finally catching on. But yeah, I mean, I think that.
Since when are reporters supposed to back down?
Well, they're not. But I mean, if you have the power to engage only with friendly news organizations and let them in the press pool, and you know that no matter what happens, they're going to spin it your way. You're not even dealing with journalists at that point. You're just dealing with lackeys who want access to you, but they're not going to ask you any kind of questions. And that's what a lot of politicians, they don't want to be one-on-one getting tough questions or being written about, but that's been going on for forever. So, Kevin, it's been going on, way before Trump. You had politicians taking that stance.
Well, I know because my father used to tell me the function of a newspaper is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable.
Right.
And I think Trump doesn't like anybody coming at him. I'd say he's rather comfortable, but he's devalued and demeaned the profession. And I'm amazed that some editors even acquiesce.
It's sickening. It's sickening. I'll just use the Washington Post as one example of a 180-degree turn in their opinion pages and their columnists, and people are leaving because, and for several years, Bezos didn't really interfere hardly at all. I have friends there and friends on the investigations team. He'd actually beefed up the investigations team, and then this complete capitulation, I'd say all these. The way I always say is that they all put their knee pads on for Trump, and I don't understand what they would have to fear unless it's some sort of corporate antitrust action. It's got to be about money, right? It's got to be about.
It's always follow the money. I understand that, but you have to know, as my father always told me, and I love to put in his quotes because we share them with the audience. He said, "Our duty as journalists is to ask the tough questions, challenge authority, and hold those in power accountable." Now, if you're a writer and you don't do that, I think you should find another profession.
Exactly, but I don't know. But you do watch many of the. I don't watch a lot of the news show, like the Meet the Press and those in the mornings on Sunday, for example, because each administration sends out its own lackeys to pitch, and sometimes the questions are pretty tough, but they almost never get answered. You never, these people, the reason they're out there is they're slick at dodging answers, and I just think for me it's a waste of time to sit there and watch. It's a little charade. If we're hoping for honesty, especially out of this administration right now, I don't, I mean, I
Look,
don't.
I was thinking about you. You had a horrible, and I was careful about this, but I mean, we talked about social media. We talked about people resenting journalists, and you put this all journalists to bed. They're an enemy of the government, an enemy of the people. Hardly. I mean, you had the most horrible situation happen in your family with your brother.
Yeah.
I mean, journalists, you don't play around in this area. I'm sorry. It's
no, and that that was a
your brother was killed in the newsroom, in case people don't know, and
it was a targeted attack against that newspaper. He was one of 5 people that were killed or shot, but it had been in motion for years. The guy who did it was angry about a column that had been written, not about my brother. The columnist was no longer at the paper anymore, but it happened to be an absolute factual column about a stalking case that this guy was involved in. He kept suing and trying to get retribution, but he was sending threatening messages to the editors before. I mean, a year before this happened. But no, they were the enemy, and the news. It was all the newspaper's fault, and so yeah, it was horrible. I mean, nightmare. But that's an example of just what you said, is that sort of, it's, you don't want people to get triggered by the rhetoric that's going on, when people, and nowadays I feel it feels like more people will act on things like that. The old days you're just sort of bitching and moaning, but these are people. If you get a nutcase with an arsenal, they're going to act out on it, and that's just a tragedy. And to vilify the media. I mean, when I got out of journalism school, it was during Watergate, and it was a few months before Nixon resigned. But I remember, the goons that he had out there blaming the press for everything. Obviously, the Washington Post, Woodward and Bernstein, but he had his whole cadre of people whose only job is to go out and say, "Well, I'm not even going to answer that question. It's just the media." We thought our democracy was imperiled as a country. There was more than one constitutional crisis involving Nixon and the Watergate tapes, and firing his own attorney general, and stuff that happens sort of daily now, it seems. But the whole country was on edge then, and remember, the war was still going on, and it was still hadn't wound down completely yet in Vietnam, and there was all that going on. But I remember one of the first stories I got sent out at my first newspaper job was we got the tip that Nixon was going to resign, and it was in August of '74, and they sent me to a mall, you remember the old appliance stores in the mall where they have big pictures, they had all the TVs and all the televisions they were selling. And they were all obviously tuned to the news, and there was a crowd that had gathered around, watching through the plate glass, watching Nixon resign. And one of my first assignments was to go talk to everybody that was watching it on TV at a mall. So it's almost quaint to think about that now, because now everybody's on their phone. They're watching it on whatever platform and whatever commentator they love. They're watching it in a little bit of an echo chamber.
well, that's what my father always said about that too. You got to give the voice to the voiceless. That's the best service a journalist can do.
This episode of Breslin's What's Doing is brought to you by EV Safety. EV Safety. Reduce your liability, protect your customers and property. Keep insurance premiums down. Let EV Safety develop your facility's lithium-ion risk management plan with training, certification, and equipment. More U.S. cities are passing safety ordinances requiring on-site countermeasures to fight lithium-ion battery fires. EV fires are inevitable, as is your liability if you operate EV charging stations or park EVs on your property. When you have an EV battery fire on your property, a few minutes can make the difference between cosmetic and catastrophic damage. No company can afford a hazmat vent on their property. Contact us today for your evaluation on all your training and certification at evsafetyproducts.com. Once again, evsafetyproducts.com. Medford Fast Lube. Put your car in good hands. With more than 25 years of experience, the experts at Medford Fast Lube will care for your vehicle like it's our own without breaking the bank. Take the stress out of the unexpected. If your car needs repair, it can be expensive as well as stressful. Take some of that weight off your shoulders with free estimates from the experts at Medford Fast Lube. Our friendly staff is here to help. Located at Route 112 in Medford, New York. www.medfordfastlube.com or dial 631-475-2107. Medford Fast Lube. Advisor Insurance Group. Advisor Insurance resource experts in life, disability, long-term care, business, home, and auto insurance across the U.S. With over 60 insurance companies offered and over 30 years of combined experience, Advisor Insurance Resource simply can't be beat. Call 866-942-4181 or on the web at advisorinsuranceresource.com.
You were very smart, and my father both. You did something. You've written so many novels. You realize it can't all be blood and guts, just like my father. He segued into comic novels, the guy that couldn't shoot straight, for too many. And just like you with all your books, you decided to write other things. It's not just newspaper writing. It's not blood and guts every minute.
No, and it's also, and then I did talk to your dad about it. I talked to Pete about, too, the idea that sometimes you can get closer to the marrow of truth in novels. I mean, because newspapers are so limited by your space and by the deadlines. But if the novels were an outlet to use what you had learned about real life and how things work. And in your case, the gang that couldn't shoot straight, Jimmy's book. But I mean,
or how the good guys finally won. He would always look like some comic thing to it. He used to tell me when I'd be reading a newspaper, don't bother reading it. Read fiction. And I'd get like all guilt-ridden and thinking, well, I'm supposed to know stuff, but all right, I'll read fiction. Just what you're saying, how you can get closer to reality with fiction.
You can do more with characters. If you'll, in my case, if I'm writing a column, I was bouncing off a news story. And sometimes you'll see one quote from one character in the story, and that's all you hear from him or her. But you think that character would fit into a novel because look, they said that. And there's no space in this of a newspaper or a column to really to let a character like that sort of run loose. You know what I mean? And know the rest of their life. You can do that with your imagination in the novels.
Yeah. When you think of my father, there's ever like one small little funny thing you always remember something and he makes you smile?
He always made me smile.
That's impossible. He wasn't that nice.
No, he wasn't, but just listening to him, I mean, I guess I just mostly remember
because he respected you. It was different.
I always remember the phone calls, and there was always just so much fun to hear from him. But he wasn't one for making small talk. He was, what's going on? Even if I did, who's this guy you wrote about? Who's this guy? And I would tell him. And I mean,
did he hang up in the middle of a sentence on you?
Yeah. Oh, no, yeah. Well, so he would, but he'd be saying something, he'd go, oh, bye, and then the phone be gone, and he'd go, then off. He was off. He was.
He'd call you up and go, yeah, what's doing?
Then all of a sudden he'd be, gone. Probably another phone ringing, or he had an idea, or he was writing. But I mean, that was him. That's what you expected, and I guess it's foolish to sort of look to another generation of those kinds of journalists, but the freedom that he had and was given because he'd earned it, to just go out and kick ass, I mean, that was his trademark. So now I do think the climate has changed somewhat in terms of, I don't know whether it's fear or whether it's just not wanting a hassle, or I don't know what it is. I don't know that there's a culture there that will produce another Jimmy Breslin or Mike Royko or Pete Hamill. I'd like to think so, but do you know anybody who's doing that right now in the business?
Or a Carl Hiaasen. I think you all had big personalities. And I think now we're in a time where it seems like, woo, that person's too big. That person's an opinion. Woo. I think we're terrified. Not we. I think it seems the media, everyone is just very concerned about. They're concerned. My father walked around concerned. That's the last thing he'd ever, wasn't even in his head. Get out of my way, and he'd go write at a story.
But look what's happened to this.
Now they're all afraid to go write at a story. Oh, I got to call my editor first. I have to get approval from my editor. I have to get approval of the publisher. This, that. By the time you're done with it, it's a waste of time, the whole idea. They've blown the original idea.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was lucky in that sense, too, is that the folks that ran the Herald didn't ever mess with me once I started the column. I mean, and I talked to other columnists who did not have that experience, who had columns killed. They said, don't write that, or had been called into the publisher's office, which never happened to me, no matter what I was writing, even if it was in direct contrast to what the editorial page, an endorsement. I was lucky, and I don't know. That's what I said. I don't know if that existed in the newsroom. I mean, I mean, if you look at the Washington Post, and even what's going on with 60 Minutes, because the parent company is trying to, do a big merger, they're suddenly timid about, well, don't ruffle the Trump administration's feathers because they could kill the merger. I mean, that isn't ever spoken.
Well, they could kill your own career or try to.
Yeah, it's never spoken out loud, but that's implicit in the message that you're getting back from management. And when you have, you're dealing with corporate mergers. What if somebody had said that to me or to your dad? Don't write this because the company's in the middle of a big business deal. Your dad would have made that. He would have made that the whole freaking column. That would have been the column.
Yeah, he wasn't big on someone leaning on him. Oh boy, oh boy. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure, because at the end of it all, my father wrote one time, "Thanks for the use of the hall." And it's very similar with your tremendous career and your friendship with him and your great talent also, which he admired, because I grew up with the word Carl Hiaasen. I used to think, Hiaasen, well, what kind of name is that? And where's this guy? Florida. Yeah, Florida. He told me that'd be the only other place he'd go. If I said, Pop, if you didn't write New York, where would you go? Miami.
Oh my God, yeah, he would have had a field day there. I mean, he knew where the stories were. Your dad did. He knew where the columns were, and the characters were that were so much a part of what he wrote.
And that's exactly why he respected you. And I can't thank you enough for your time. We know that you're onto big things with Bad Monkey and your new novel, and you've so many bestsellers. So life has been fantastic for you as a writer. And
I've been very lucky, Kevin. I was very, very lucky to have known your dad.
Oh, you're very talented. That's why. And we can't thank you enough. And God bless and stay well, Carl.
You too, Kevin. Thanks again.